program along with Jillian Levinson, who is troubleshooting as we speak. I co-lead Woman to Woman. And when I say that I co-lead it, we really just have the privilege of supporting our amazing volunteers in the work that they do. So if all of the Woman to Woman volunteers could just stand up, please, so everyone can see who you are. So the volunteers are the backbone and cornerstone of this program. We absolutely could not do what we do without all of them, and they are phenomenal, and it is a privilege to be here with our amazing volunteers and with all of you incredible patients, survivors, and your guests. So thank you again. In addition to this being the first program live that we've had since before the pandemic, this is also the 20th anniversary year of Woman to Woman. So Woman to Woman started in 2003 by the late, wonderful Valerie Goldheim, along with a team of incredible folks. And the mission of the program then was "You are not alone," and the mission of the program now is "You are not alone." And it has never changed. And while we have grown exponentially in terms of the amount of volunteers and the services we're able to provide, we will never change that part of our mission. Again, it could not be more perfect that we're here together to celebrate the 20th anniversary, to celebrate a little bit of hopefully a reprieve in a tough time, in our world, although obviously there are still many challenges, and we have a wonderful program ahead of us. So we just want to thank you. We're going to show you a quick video, and then we're going to just jump right into the program. In the meantime, though, please feel free if you want to get up and you need to grab snacks, get more caffeine or coffee, and don't worry all about that. We are all among friends here, as you will see.
Hello, my name is Mertice Wooten. I have been a volunteer with Woman to Woman for the past 14 years.
Hi, my name is Nancy Rizari.
Sandra. Janet Gold.
Takeda Ladson.
Linda Shepard, and I'm a patient at Mount Sinai Hospital, cancer patient.
My name is Amanda Fitzpatrick. I am a two-time cancer survivor of uterine cancer.
I am a 21-year survivor of ovarian cancer.
And I am a survivor mentor with Woman to Woman.
They called, they came, sat by my bed, they held my hand, and they gave me the power and the strength that I needed to get through this.
Woman to Woman is a community, a circle, filled with women who are empathetic, who understands peers.
Passionate. Very, very loving and caring.
Inspiring.
A safe space.
Incredibly resilient.
Intelligent. Supporting, educating, and amazing.
Giving people a sense that we understand, we've been there, and we can help because you're not alone.
All the facilitators involved do a program planning that is exquisite.
Journaling, medical information, goal setting, so many activities, holistic activities.
They prepared me. And when you know what to expect and prepare for it and still have hope and promise, and you have the community of women that are closely knitted together, you feel like you're going to be just fine.
When I was in treatment in 2014, on my first day of chemo, in walked a woman named Valerie Goldheim, and she is the creator of Woman to Woman. And she came in and she said, I went through this 14 years ago with the same diagnosis as you. And for me, this was the first real hope that I had that I could survive.
I give to woman because I believe woman to woman helped to save my life.
When it was my time, they were there for me. And so I want to be there for anybody else in their time with me.
I think fairly early on, my goal became to hopefully be able to be a volunteer like Valerie in the years to come. And here I am.
Woman to Woman provides, I'm going to say treatment, it's not treatment, but support to my patients in ways that I can't. I mean, I can give the best surgery, the best treatment, but I can't do what Woman to Woman does. And that's something special that can't be provided in any other way.
I just want to take this opportunity to say happy anniversary,
Woman to Woman, happy 20th anniversary. Happy 20th anniversary. Happy 20th anniversary.
Happy 20th anniversary.
Happy 20th anniversary. Congratulations.
Happy anniversary, and please stay connected with these women that need you guys so much, because I know you did a tremendous job with me.
Welcome again to our first live reunion. Let's go, yeah! I'm Sandra Wang, survivor and volunteer at Woman to Woman. As Rachel just mentioned, and probably many of you already know, Woman to Woman's mission and vision is to provide gynecological cancer survivors with community, strength, and hope. And we just felt like at our 20th anniversary, it's only fitting that we delve a little deeper into the healing power of friendship and connections. And we're very fortunate and honored to have Dr. Harding and Dr. Epstein today to share their expertise and their insights about the transformative power of kindness and friendship on our mental, emotional, and physical well-beings. So, and then we'll also learn some actionable tips today. So then hopefully we can infuse the kindness, joy, and purpose into our everyday life. So today, the program, we're gonna first hear from Dr. Harding and then Dr. Epstein. And then I think we're gonna have an interactive exercises led by Dr. Harding. And then we're gonna have a Q&A session. If you don't have the index card, please grab them. You can write down the questions on them. We'll come around and collect them. And yes, there's food and drinks there. And I just want to mention the bathrooms are, the ladies' bathroom are on this floor. There's unisex bathroom, individual bathrooms upstairs on the first ground floor. And I hope you guys will enjoy this morning with us together. Thank you very much for coming. And I'll leave the floor to my other volunteer, Janet. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Janet Gold, volunteer at Women to Women. And our first speaker is Dr. Kelli Harding, who is an assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at Columbia University Irving Medical Center and an expert in mind-body medicine. After training in internal medicine at the Mount Sinai Hospital, she then completed residency and a research fellowship in biological psychiatry at Columbia, as well as a master's degree in public health. Dr. Harding has worked extensively at Columbia's New York Presbyterian Hospital Emergency Room and is the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Rabbit Effect: Live Longer, Happier, Healthier, with the groundbreaking science of kindness. She's the co-founder of Our Kind of Club, which promotes global kindness and understanding through social connection. She's appeared frequently on media outlets such as Today, Good Morning America, BBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Prevention, LA Times, Oprah Magazine, Parents, and Medscape. She also served on multiple advisory boards, including the Association of American Medical Colleges, Nextdoor, the Foundation for Social Connection, and Reader's Digest. Dr. Harding lives in New York City with her husband and their 3 sons, a 10th grader, 8th grader, and 5th grader, and a rescue dog named Athena. Please give a warm welcome for Dr. Kelli Harding.
It's just absolutely incredible to be here in this room with all of you, and I am so excited because today we're going to be talking about a special ability that each of you have, and I think you're probably well aware of it being in this room, but we're going to just make sure that we draw attention to it. It's sort of a superpower, actually, if you would. Would you like to hear more? Sure. All right, sounds good. So I think, when most people out in the community think about health, they typically think about, diet, exercise, trips to the doctor, sleep, genetics, those kinds of things. Today, we're going to talk about a really critical and overlooked component of your health. And I just can't wait to share more. So my promise to you is we're gonna cover about, like 5 decades of public health research, and I'll try to make it as straightforward as possible. I ask that all of you, if you hear something that feels helpful, like jot it down or tuck it away, and also listen for a friend who maybe isn't here, or someone else in your life that might benefit from it. And I also ask that my hope is that you'll walk away with at least one usable thing that you can go out and do right away. And I hope we're going to have fun in this process. There is one thing I just have to say right off the bat before I talk about kindness. So, kindness is, just to be clear, it's not like they're kind people and unkind people. Kindness is a practice. We all have our moments. And I always approach this conversation as a learner and also with a great deal of humility. I just have to share, I actually, while putting together slides for a talk about kindness, snapped at my children. So just so you know, I am not perfect either with this, and we are all showing up and practicing. So just a little bit of background about myself. So as Janet has mentioned, that so I started this journey because I wanted to make sure that we, I wanted to try to make as many people as healthy as possible. And so my way of doing that was to go to medical school and to learn absolutely everything I could about the human body and how it functioned. And, that meant that pretty much every day I was hanging out in labs, isolated in the hospital, looking down microscopes, learning everything. And then I got to, sorry, I might be blocking the screen here. Then I got to, the wards and met patients that were there and discovered something truly remarkable. And that's that, the elegant textbook descriptions of disease didn't match up with people's experiences. And I'm seeing some heads nod because I suspect you've lived that in this room, and I can't wait to hear your stories too. Because I would see 2 people with the same diagnoses have very different courses of illness, and it really made me wonder sort of what are we missing? And I'm just going to ask if you might raise your hand if it made you feel, and I'm going to read out some of these words: brave, energized, uplifted, safe, and feel free if you hear your word to raise your hand. Valued, supported, generous, included, inspired, joyful, seen, welcomed, understood, appreciated, respected, hopeful, happy, loved, and alive. Yeah, so I'm seeing lots of hands. And isn't that amazing that something as small as a generous act can make all of those feelings happen in you and in the people around you. So really what we're talking about here is how kindness is connection. It's basically, in many ways, after looking at all of this research and data, I think it really comes down to kindness is the social glue that holds us together. And it's so powerful. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. I did want to say, because of that feeling that you got from the kindness, I have been quoted as saying, if I could, I would prescribe kindness to everybody. And since I can't, I am here talking with all of you, and I go out and I talk to lots of people all the time about this because it's really quite powerful and it's in our control. So I just want to also share this pretty striking statistic. So we know about, and as a physician, I always have to double check this, but it's always surprising that it turns out probably only about 10 to 20% of our overall health and well-being is due to the medical care we receive, even top-notch, wonderful, world-class medical care like at Mount Sinai. The other thing that we can pay attention to and just want to be mindful of is our neighborhood. So where we live, work, and play oftentimes really makes a difference to our health, and there are ample studies about this. Feeling safe in our neighborhood is important, and that what's nice about it is that we can actually influence this as well. There are studies that show even just like knowing 6 neighbors can increase your trust in a community. That there are things you can do like, putting more green space, more trees actually boosts people's moods, and studies have shown it lowers rates of depression prescriptions, depression medication prescriptions, as well as lowering violence in neighborhoods too, which is pretty striking. And that's, again, something we have some control over. While we can't always move, we can do something. This is actually something that a friend organized in my neighborhood. She realized after the pandemic, people didn't know their neighbors as well. And so she just put out a table. She called it the longest table, put out a table, and hundreds of people showed up to this potluck. It was amazing. And so that's the thing. It doesn't take sometimes a lot, but it can really make a difference, and it makes you feel connected to the place you are. And it turns out that's important. The other thing, which I love because we're doing this here today together, is education. And there's this wild statistic that I just have to share, that it's for every 1 life saved by medicine, education saves 8. And so I don't know if we have any teachers in the room or educators. Yeah, all right, my mom was a teacher too. So I think that's the thing. We don't think of education typically as part of our health and well-being, but actually it absolutely is. And it's really powerful. In fact, according to that study that was well done, it's 8 times more powerful. So we need to, all of the things are important, but not to be neglected as education. And so opportunities where you can think of learning something new, doing something new is just a boost to all those great things that you're already doing for your health at Mount Sinai. So, so in terms of, I put this picture of porpoise up there.
I love that.
Thank you. I thought this was hilarious when I put it up there, so I'm glad some people are appreciating it. But so your purpose is really important, and this is actually something that, as a clinician, that got me interested in those medical mysteries to begin with. Is why is it that some people do so well sometimes and really defy their diagnoses? And you know, a lot of times when you talk to people, they have this deep burning desire to do something, to reach a milestone. They have a clear sense of purpose, and you know, purpose gets you through. And what's unique is your purpose is up to you. It might be your family, it might be a role that you do, or something that you're busy and engaged with. It's totally up to you, and it's super important. So don't neglect the power of purpose when it comes to your health. And there are all these studies that show it reduces all-cause mortality as well, which is truly remarkable. I think that's the thing. Throughout our lifespans, no matter what season of our life we're in, we all need a reason to get up and out of bed and to get engaged in the world. And along with that is work. And of course, you know, work is a big topic and could probably be a lecture in itself, but the idea is that, you know, we spend about 1/3 of our lives at work, and if you're working, if you have other people who are working, we want to pay attention to how we're treating others and how we're being treated at work, because it really matters to our health. It's a big deal in healthcare right now. And I had this quote that you could probably toss out your human resources, be kind. And I said it kind of offhandedly, but what was exciting about it is the World Economic Forum picked it up and they ran it over and over and over. And I was really delighted, because wouldn't that be great if our workplaces were actually kinder? There's so many ways we could make it kinder. So there we have it. It's really easy. Just be kind, no problem, right? Well, not so much, right? So there's this quote, why do people forget to be kind? And this was said by an 11-year-old at a talk that I gave. And that's the thing, right? We know that kindness is good for us. We know it makes us feel good. We know that it's important, and it is hard. We all have our moments, right? So let's talk a little bit about sort of what's involved in that. So we know that unkindness also sneaks up on you, right? Like you're just sort of hanging out doing something, and all of a sudden, boom, there it is. One of the big ways that it comes up is fairness. And we know that this is really important, particularly when we look sometimes at health outcomes. And so, you know, we all as human beings have a desire to be treated fairly. So you can even think about, you know, if you had a situation where you felt it was, or a situation was unfair or something was unfair, like were there other people there that saw you and acknowledged you and supported you? And just think about that, because those are the people we all want to be for each other. And I know you're doing that as part of this group as well. And, you know, the question is, how can we not be bystanders, but upstanders when we see something that's unfair? And of course, part of this is sort of not necessarily blatant things that people do that are unfair, but also what are known as microaggressions, or sort of like small moments. And some people call this, like in public health, like death by 1,000 paper cuts, because it's like these little things that people are experiencing every day that can be quite painful overall. And the other big thing, which I really appreciate about Women to Women, is talking about mental health, because it turns out our mental health really matters to our well-being as well. We know that half of us will experience a diagnosis of anxiety or depression over our lifetimes. And we also know that depression is actually the #1 cause of disability in the world, even more so than other well-known risk factors. So there's a quote that also makes me think that unkindness has been around for a long time, because it's from Plato, that says, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a harder battle. So I was just yesterday talking with the medical students, and we were talking about when somebody's being really unkind to you, how do you handle that? Or someone's shouting at you, or something's going on. Yes?
I heard a story once.
Here, actually, would you be willing to stand up? Thank you, Victoria.
I'm Victoria. I heard a story once about a mother whose child was being bullied at school, and people thought that, you know, how should she react to that? Go to the other family and be angry. But her reaction was to invite that bully over to her home for dinner and a sleepover. And the two children ended up becoming best friends for life. And I think one of the strategies that I use, or not that I use, that I think that the very people who are being unkind or a bully or behave poorly, those are the people to show extra kindness to. Because if they felt love in their hearts, they wouldn't need to be a bully or to be unkind. So those are the people who need your kindness all the more.
Oh, thank you, Victoria.
Absolutely. And so thank you. That was really beautiful. And wow, what an incredible example of kindness that takes a lot of courage. Exactly as Ms. Rochester was saying. So, all right. So it's a big world. There's a lot of bullies out there. There's a lot of unkindness. And the question is, what can I do? And so
I love your rabbits. I love your rabbits.
Thank you. So I had no connection with rabbits before I wrote the book, The Rabbit Effect, which I have a copy for everyone in the room, but I've grown quite fond of them. So I just want you to remember your superpower in those moments. And we're going to talk about in our remaining 5 minutes or so, 4 ways to practice kindness. So the first is exactly what we're doing here and what you're doing with your work with Women to Women is this idea that, we need to be thinking about health in a much broader way. It's important and critical for us to get our high quality medical care. And it's also important for us to be thinking about all the social connections around us and how we can create more positive social relationships. The next thing, and we're going to talk about this in some of the exercises we'll do, is practicing micro kindnesses. So it doesn't take a lot. Like you don't need to donate a lot of money, or those things are nice, but you can also just smile at someone or make eye contact with someone, or put your phone down and look around and connect with somebody around you, which is actually listening to someone is one of the greatest gifts of kindness that you can give. And gratitude. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this. It's incredibly easy to do, but again, it's like all the health benefits, and there are these amazing studies. Like there was a study in nurses that showed when nurses received gratitude, they not only performed better at their jobs, but they also slept better at night, which is pretty amazing. And then it becomes this virtuous circle where they're sleeping better, and they feel more engaged, and it all goes from there. So don't forget about the power and pause before you engage in what we can. It might be sort of a second to react or respond actually perspective, because you're not using your more primitive like flight. You're actually moving up into your higher functioning, and you're able to better process things. There's also studies that show people are far less likely to be biased when they pause action. And we also know that kindness really grows community. And that's what's so remarkable about what we're all doing here this morning, and what you're all doing for beneficial, not only for the recipient, but for the giver. And there's a quote that volunteers live longer too, which is pretty amazing.
Also that volunteers get more than they give.
Oh, yes, that volunteers get more than they give. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Virginia. So we all know that, as I just wrap up here, we all know that challenge is inevitable and growth is optional. So just think about all the ways you've grown from the challenges you faced, and we'll talk more about that as well. And I also just want to take a second and just sort of think about, because I like to think about this in doing this work, is what would our world look like if we all were being much more conscientious about making kind choices in moments? Think about it. Maybe it's a world where every child grows up feeling safe and valued and needed. Maybe it's a world where we show up to our days and feel appreciated and seen. We're treated fairly, and that we're able to contribute. So I just want to, again, say thank you to Women for making this possible, for making us all feel seen and valued today. And I know it's possible. And I think the other thing is, I just want to say, so I get called in to talk to all kinds of groups, and I've just been so impressed, and just to keep going with that. I just wanted to say thank you. And we're, thanks. I'm going to turn it over now, and I think we may have someone who's doing an introduction. Maybe it's Janet again. Oh, okay. Thank you.
We met.
Hi, I'm Chiquita Latson, and I am a woman-to-woman volunteer. And our next speaker it will be Irwin Epstein.
It was perfect.
It was? Okay, good. Irwin Epstein, MSW, PhD, is Professor Emeritus at the Silberman School of Social Work, Hunter College, where he occupied the Helen Rare Chair of Applied Social Work Research until he retired in 2015. As adjunct professor in the Department of Community Medicine at Mount Sinai, he conducted practice-based research seminars for local allied health and visiting international health and mental health. During his tenure there, he was a Fulbright Scholar at the University of Wales and visiting professor at the University of Warwick. He's conducted practice research workshops and mentored individuals from Israel, Singapore, UK, and the USA. At the University of Melbourne, he was the first American social researcher to be asked to deliver the Migonya Ancestral Home public lecture. Author and co-author of many research and nearly 100 peer-reviewed articles on everything from English mothers' reactions to fetal abnormality to good death among adult Chinese cancer patients. His most recent research text was Clinical Data Mining, Integrating Practice and Research, Oxford University Press, 2010. Translated into traditional Chinese in 2014. During his career, his passion was teaching social work, allied health practitioners, and doctoral students how to conduct meaningful research with routinely available qualitative and/or quantitative data. Retired in 2015, his passion became partner carer to his wife, Fran, a social worker at Mount Sinai for 25 years, but then facing her fourth and final cancer. Strangely enough, Fran inspired his memoir about the value of male friendship, entitled Men as Friends, from Cicero to Svevo to Cataldo. It was published by Kohler and Company in April. Fran passed in June. She was loved by everyone, but who met her as cancer patient, social worker, and colleague at Mount Sinai. Please give a welcome to Irwin Epstein.
This is really a high wire act for me, in part because the last public talk I gave was at Fran's funeral in June, because usually when I give talks, they involve PowerPoint and presenting data. I'm not doing that. I'm talking about my personal experience today. It's a high wire act because I'm a man giving a talk to a woman-to-woman's program about male friendship. I have to say, oh, wait, I gotta get my book. I gotta get another book. And the other one too. And my publisher wants me to do this, but writing about male friendship, but I need to tell you that women like the book as well. And so I think the themes that come across, the themes that Kelli talked about, are implicit in the storytelling I do in this book. Because the book is not a research book, it's not a text. I've written 1 million texts. It's really stories about male friends, most gone, one still alive, who was a friend since high school. We talk every week. We say, I love you at the end of each conversation. But one act of kindness you could do for me is, I think I have 20 minutes. Could somebody put up a 5 when I have 5 more minutes to go? Because I'm in new territory here. I didn't tell you that I'm blind in one eye. And if the lights go out, we're really in trouble. And I'll have to wing it completely. But Kelli made me do this with her assignment. I always follow assignments from professors. And I want to tell you a story about an act of kindness that happened to me on the way to the theater today, on the way here. And it also contains an act of kindness that Fran did and that I talked about at her funeral. I was walking down 75th Street and feeling really good, beautiful day, looking forward to this. And a rather disheveled guy comes up to me and says, excuse me, you look like you're going to work. He said, I don't want to take too much of your time, but if you could give me $10, I could use breakfast. I opened my wallet and there was a 5 because I had taken a cab. I got a 5 back. I said, I'm not a rich man. Here's $5. I hope you get breakfast. He says, can I talk to you for a little minute? I said, sure. And I don't know where this is going to go. So he says, if you and your wife were walking down the street and you saw me, would you be laughing at me disrespectfully? I said, wait a second. First of all, I want to tell you, my wife died in June. But when she was alive, neither of us would have been laughing at you. She was a social worker. I'm a social worker. It's about people. You're in need. You asked me really politely. I'm happy to give it to you. So when I mentioned Fran, then the story came back to me from the eulogy I was about Fran. Fran was a great social worker, and she was an amazing person. And I have her picture on the table over there if you want to take a look. No, you'll after I talk. So anyway, Fran was tiny, and getting a seat on the subway was really important to her, largely because reaching the, if you were near that was okay, but reaching, that was a problem. So she got on the subway. This was like maybe 5 years before she died. She got on the subway, and the car was filled except for one seat next to a homeless guy. This was a C train, next to a homeless guy with a market basket with all his belongings in it. Fran was endlessly curious about people. So she immediately went and sat down next to him. And it looked like other people on the train were concerned. Is he dangerous? Whatever. And she gets into a conversation with him about why he chooses the C train. And he says, because it's the longest one from start to finish. And so I don't have to get off. So then I get into this long conversation about how he lives and so on. And the thing about Fran was never patronizing, always like person to person. We're all in it together. So she gets to 96th Street, and people are still looking like they're slightly protective of her. And she gets off at 96th Street. She says goodbye to him. And as she's getting off the train, he says, "I'm not married." And she loved telling that story. And so anyway, so I tell that story to this guy on 75th Street. He says, he says, "How do you know I'm homeless?" I said, "Whoa, I'm not assuming you're homeless. You're somebody in need, and you asked me for help. And I'm giving you, and I gave you what I could. I'm not a rich man. I gave you what I could, and I hope, you enjoy your breakfast." He said, will I pray for him?" I said, "Yes, will you pray for me?" Yeah. And he walked away, and he was kind of shaking his head. Just what happened to him. This wasn't the way it was supposed to go. But I left feeling really good and feeling like I made a connection. And connections are what this is all about. That was what Kelly was talking about. So, now, how much more time do I have? I'm not used to.
Keep going. Just keep going.
Okay. Thank you. So first of all, if any of you are old enough to remember John Gray's book, "Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus," when I got the invitation from Rachel, and in the subject it was W2W, I thought, if men are from Mars and women are from Venus, the first message in outer space would be M2W2W. And that would be the title of my talk, "Man to Women to Women." It was perfect. But still you're wondering, and still in some ways I'm wondering what the hell I'm doing here. talking to a group of women who have had the experience of gynecologic cancer. And it's a good question. But the answer is I have some creds in that I don't know if there have been more papers written about women to women, but I co-authored the first published paper about women to women with Arden Moulton. Arden, is Arden here? No. Okay. So, and this was in my role as research consultant to Mount Sinai, where I would work with different groups of multidisciplinary groups or groups of social workers and help them write studies or give presentations about their own programs. In other words, they would do research on the questions that were of greatest interest to them. And that's what I call practice-based research. My friend Dolores printed up 2 copies of my talk, one in 2 different font sizes. One from my left eye and one, but I can't do that. But it looks like my PhD dissertation. But in any case, I'll get through it. So, one day, Fran and I, we had a little house, a beach house in Ocean Grove, New Jersey, and it was our refuge during, Fran was a cancer patient for 32 years, and for 30 years, that house was our refuge. And one day, maybe 5 years ago, I had retired. We went to Hong Kong. See, so now I don't have to worry about this anymore. It's a positive. So we went to Hong Kong in 2015 to celebrate my retirement and to give away all the free copies of the book that was translated into Chinese, because I couldn't read it. And I was concerned about the translation, because I was concerned about the jokes and how they'd be translated. And then there were all these flow charts and computer diagrams that I never had in that book. That book was about clinical data mining. And the purpose of the book was to encourage people to use available data to research their own work, to reflect on their own work. And a subtext of it was to find alternatives to clinical trial studies. Because in social work, clinical trial studies, RCTs, randomized controlled trials, have become the gold standard. And it's a gold standard in all kinds of fields now. But in particular in social work, I felt that you didn't have to prove that providing food services to people had a beneficial effect. You didn't have to randomize and have somebody denied a counselor about, because there was some about renal dialysis. Either you get a pamphlet or you get somebody like a volunteer or a social worker to work with you while you're getting renal dialysis. Guess what? It helped to have the social worker. Yeah, the pamphlet didn't. And so my, in a way, mission was to seek alternatives to randomized controlled studies within social work. I'm not saying anything about pharmacology or medicine or anything like that. But I know the methodology, and I'm always looking for ways to achieve it, to achieve the benefit without the cost of doing those studies. And I have to tell you that in those last 5 years, each time her oncologist said, you know, there's a clinical trial you may be eligible for. And he had no idea who I was. You know, he had no reason to know about my connection to Mount Sinai. I was just as happy as she was that there was a clinical trial available. But I would ask him specific questions about the implementation of it, because I would pick up some little differences that weren't necessarily shared. And he is a great clinician researcher, both. And he would always respond, good question. But he always had a good answer. And I really like that. So he was thinking ahead about something. But there were some times when people came in who were in charge of the clinical trial would gloss over certain things. And I would catch them and say, well, wait a second, there is a comparison group in this, isn't there? And so we talk about that. So Fran and I could make the most informed choices we possibly could. But I have to tell you that despite, you know, my mission and my work, when there was a clinical trial available, we went for it. When there was nothing left, and we got the last, you know, usually Fran would say, we got bad findings. Fran would say, what's next? Is there anything else? He'd say, there's always something else. Not true, but he always had something else. And she always went for it. The last time, this is not in my paper, the last time, the results were really not good, and her side effects were really bad. And he said, I'm afraid there's no point. And she reached across to him, touched him, and said, and you do this all day? And he just shook his head and said, it's not the best part of my day. And I want to go back to my book. And I want to talk about, instead of pushing my book, It's available on Amazon, on Indie Books, on Barnes & Noble, paperback, whatever. It's up to you. But the book that I really want to promote is a book you probably know by somebody you may know, and somebody that I saw on the screen a few minutes ago, and that's Cynthia Hayes.
Yes.
And Cynthia Hayes wrote a wonderful book called The Big Ordeal, Understanding and Managing the Psychological Turmoil of Cancer. Cynthia has a blog. She has a wonderful blog. It's just a fantastic book. And she was Fran's best tennis partner. She's not here, but she's, I think, watching. So anyway, she was the last person to hit balls with Fran in Central Park. She said, let's just go hit balls. Okay. Cynthia showed me the book in manuscript. And she wondered what I thought. I read it. Like Kelly's book, it's incredibly comprehensive in focusing on the subject and very accessible. So I read the manuscript for The Big Ordeal, and she said, do you have any suggestions or changes? And I love titles. I love playing with titles. I said, you know, the only thing, there are typos, and I told her about the typos. She said, the only thing that I do is change the title. And she said, what would you change it to? I'd say, The Big Fucking Ordeal. She liked it, but the publisher didn't. So it's The Big Ordeal. Okay. And she has a great blog. And I have a piece in there about, she interviewed me about being, I like to use the term partner carer, about being a carer while Fran was still alive. And she said, I've never done this before for my blog. And I said, that's surprising to me. Is there plenty of carers? She said, no, I've never done this with somebody where the patient was still alive. She's only done it retrospectively. So I did that with Cynthia. Fran kept making corrections for months. And finally I said, look, Fran, you know, I know I said you have to approve it first, but let's just, because she was making technical suggestions about how long she was in the laminar airflow room, and come on. So finally, we got that posted, and I also wrote a remembrance of Fran, which is posted on Oldsters, which is a wonderful blog on, I can never remember the name of the Substack. So if you want to read about Fran, you can read about her there. You know, the trick for me is to get through this without crying. So, and Fran's picture is there. Anyway, so I went into grief counseling while Fran was still alive because I had lost 3 male friends almost within the same year. And each one was George. Each one was named George. They were entirely different. You know, one was a world-famous political scientist. Another was a social work professor with me. And another was a jazz pianist who spent time in prison because he sold drugs to a narc. I said he was doing word processing at home. And we became friends, and he told me this story. I said, oh, George, I'm really sorry. He said, no, it's the best 3 years of my life. He said, I met all these other jazz pianists who are also in prison, who taught me all kinds of stuff. And I'm sorry? I heard, all right, okay. So anyway, I lost each one of these dear friends in the course of a year. And I couldn't get past it. So I went into grief therapy. And out of that, I decided to publish an article about these three guys. But I wanted to publish it in Modern Love, this section in the New York Times. I'd already tried publishing another piece there when I was on steroids for a lung infection, and it was about my relationship with Mr. Toto, a Japanese automatic toilet we had installed, and it was a fantasy about Mr. Toto and I as friends, but I was sure he was having an affair with the showerhead, the French showerhead called Fifi. They immediately rejected it, but when I sent For the Love of Three Georges, it took 3 months before I got the same rejection. It doesn't meet our needs. So I can understand the one about Mr. Toto, but this one was really hurtful. And I thought, well, if they can't deal with this, I don't want to reduce each one of these guys to 500 words. I want to write a book or expand it or something. And we were walking back from the beach in Ocean Grove, and Fran said, you know, you need a project other than me. And that's how I came to write the book. And I wrote the book in maybe 8-10 months. And it sustained me while Fran was going through the hardest time. Book came out in April. Fran died in June. She had ADD. Reading was really hard. It didn't matter to me, but she was really happy to see it. I was happy to do it. Now, there's another book on the market, which I don't want to plug, which is called As Friends. No, On Friendship. And it's written by a Princeton professor of philosophy. And it goes, we're talking about Plato, he's an Aristotelian. And he wrote this book, this very popular book on friendship, and made a lot of money, but it's not my book. And I heard about it through a friend in Scotland who wrote a book that I thought he would have loved, and she thought, she attended his lectures at the University of Edinburgh. She said, you should read his book, but he's not a very nice guy. And I said, how do you know that? She said, well, at the end of his series of lectures, I gave him a copy of my new book, which is titled The Epistemology of Virtue. Really heavy duty. It's a wonderful book. It's brilliant. And he took it. He barely thanked her. She hoped he might email her. He hoped he might endorse it. Nothing. So, I don't know, 3 years ago, I was asked to give a talk at a conference at the University of Beijing, on Zoom, of course, because I had started writing about friendship between clinicians and practitioners. Because at least in social work, there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of disregard that researchers have for practitioners. And I know, because I lived with a practitioner for 32 years, who worked with survivors of incest, who worked with dying patients of breast cancer. You know, I knew that I couldn't do what she did. So anyway, so I wrote about the ideal relationship between researchers and practitioners, because they can't all be researcher clinicians like Fran's oncologist was. And I read the book, and in the book, he talks about 3 kinds of friendships, or Aristotle talks about 3 kinds of friendships. Friendships that are essentially one way. He says he calls them, or it's translated as friendships based on pleasure. But we all know that one-way friendships can be abusive, and they can last a long, long time. And some of the pleasure could come from the abuse of the other person. So I always thought that translation is not quite right. Another kind of friendship he talks about, Aristotle talks about, and this guy from Princeton, who I won't name. And then he talks, there it goes. He talks about mutual friendships of mutual benefit. That's where each person gets a different kind of benefit from the friendship. They're well aware of it. They're well aware of the difference that they're each getting, but they each derive either pleasure or economic benefit, or, so I wrote a lot of textbooks with guys that I didn't especially enjoy, and with a woman that I didn't especially enjoy, but, those were mutual benefit relationships or colleagues. The highest form of friendship that Aristotle talks about is virtue friendship. And virtue friendship is where each party wants the best for the other party. And that takes work, it takes communication, it takes connection. Virtue friendships, Aristotle pointed out, are always changing. They don't remain the same as needs change. But they're not necessarily unstable, even though they can end at a certain point. But he's saying that virtue friendships are the highest form of friendships. Now, my colleague so I wrote to him, and I said, I used your book extensively in this talk that I gave in Beijing that was translated into Chinese, obviously, Russian, and Vietnamese. And I thought he'd be interested. I'm citing him. He'd be interested. He never wrote back. So I looked at his profile at Princeton. He's a living Greek philosopher. He's not a dead one. I looked at his profile, and the thing that struck me, it says he's a great cha-cha-cha dancer. So if you're interested, if you like to cha-cha, his book is on friendship. You can easily check it out, but I'm not going to name him.
One minute mark.
Okay, thank you. So, all right. So connection. It's not so hard to make connections. And I wanted it, and separate from what happened on 75th Street, I want to tell you about what happened on 96th Street. I was visiting Fran. She was in the hospital again. I was so exhausted, I couldn't do the walk across the park. We live right across the park, and many of our walks to chemo or to scans or whatever were across the park. She loved to take photographs. It was a great way to just relax and go. And sometimes we would walk back, sometimes we would take a cab. Often we took a cab. And so I was visiting her at Mount Sinai. I got on the 96th Street Crosstown bus at Columbus. It was already crowded. The bus stops at 96th and Central Park West, and lots of people get on. And also, it seems like the transverse is really backed up. So the bus is really crowded, and a young black man with dreadlocks carrying a 2 or 3 year old boy gets on the bus, and he's sort of inching his way toward the back. And I'm a sociologist, but I was also a single father for a number of years. So some of it was empathy, some of it was sociological interest, is highly diversely populated bus. Nobody offers this guy a seat. So he's standing by me, and I tap him, and I said, "You want to sit down?" He said, "No, it's okay, he can stand." So he puts the kid down, and he tells him, "Hold on." He says, "No." And the bus starts, and it starts and stops and starts and stops. The father says, "Hold on." And I'm wearing this is during COVID, heavy COVID season, I'm wearing a mask. And I look at this kid, and I said, "You really like it when the bus stops and starts, don't you? You like to see whether you can keep standing, whether you're gonna," and he said, "Yes." So, bus stops at 96th and 5th. Father picks him up. They're heading toward the back. This kid looks for me. He reaches over his father's shoulder and goes like this. And I was so happy. And I couldn't wait to get to Mount Sinai to tell Fran about this story. And she said, "That's the kind of kid I was." And it was true. And she was like that right until the end. She took chances. You know, she loved life. She loved the people around her. And I love what you guys are doing.
I just want to thank Kelli and Irwin, our presenters today. They did an amazing job, and it's going to be a very tough book to come back on this all these years away. I wanted to thank everyone for coming today. I wanted to thank the volunteers. I think they should stand up, anyone that's a volunteer in the room. Not all of us, many of us. And I'm very grateful for their friendship and for everything that they do. I wanted to thank Rachel and Jillian for guiding us through COVID. Without them, I don't know how we would have gone on. I think COVID made us stronger as a group. COVID really made us stronger, and I'm really, really proud. And I know we all are of where we are today. And I just want to thank all the patients that came out today. I see patients that have been with us from the original reunion, and I'm very thankful that you're still here. And to Anne and to Alice, it means a lot to me that you still come by. And thank you all for your support. Thank you for coming today. And also, one other thing, we didn't know it was the marathon today. So, so when we say cancer is a marathon, we did not try and time this with the marathon. So we tried to be aware of every cancer walk there was, not realizing that it was a New York City Marathon weekend. So we apologize for that. And, but thank you all so much for coming. Thank you.
I don't have much else to add. I think following Robin is a really hard act that I prefer not to, but just want to let everyone know that there will be a questionnaire that will be emailed to you. We really want your input, the good, the bad, just so we can grow the program and make it better. So thank you again. We do have to thank you gifts for our speakers, and thank you to the Women Fund to Fight Women's Cancer, who supports our reunion. We would not do this without them.